What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now.
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, we have been away, but we have not been idle. We've definitely been in the lab as per usual, testing out some random rogue decks that I would ideally like to play test and mess about with. Now the deck in question today is actually Nekroz Dogmatika, which is an interesting build. I've seen a few profiles knocking about on YouTube, so I decided to just kind of like take the cards because I did have a chord lying around and just kind of like put something together. Now what I will say is this is a deck in process, so there's still a few things that are missing, still a few cards that need to be included, and there's a few placeholders basically. So I still need to test the deck a little bit more because there's a few things I'd like to include, like some more going second cards for example, but nevertheless a very interesting deck as it is. And as always, hit me up in the comment section with your suggestions on how to improve the deck. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. So starting us off with our consistency, obviously we're running 3 Nekroz of Brionac. So Brionac is just basically basic search into a Nekroz monster, so definitely a nice consistency hit right there. Next up, this is your main ritual play. You're going to be going into Nekroz of Unicorn. Now what I've noticed is in the very short testing that I've done, this deck does really well against like meta decks, mainly because there's a lot of special summoning from the extra deck. As soon as Unicorn hits the field, he's basically like a Dark Ruler no more for any extra deck monster, which is very useful in today's age of Yu-Gi-Oh, with negations flying about everywhere and all the kind of like interruptions that potentially could be on your opponent's turn, on your turn basically. So Unicorn is definitely a strong suit. It can also add back a Nekroz card from grave, so you can actually grab one of your ritual spells from grave if you're in a bit of a pinch. Next up, we've got our Nekroz Spell and Trap Searcher, even though we do not have any traps in Nekroz at the moment. 2 Nekroz of Classilas. And then for the one-offs, now bear in mind ladies and gents, like I said, this is a deck in process and I'm still kind of like messing about with ratios. So there's a few inclusions here that you probably might not agree with, like Decisive Armor for example, but I put him in there mainly because of the name and just to give my Nekroz of Unicorn, which is your main win condition, a little bit of basically a little bit of attack and a little bit of protection. So armor just grants attack and defense. A Reed Bear is your nice healthy monster negate, which is definitely needed for this deck. We all know what Trishula does, and then we've also got Gongnir and Valkyrius. Valkyrius is actually quite useful, especially ending the battle phase, because typically your opponent's going to want to just easily beat over your Nekroz of Unicorn just to get it off the field, mainly because its attack isn't that high. And Valkyrius just literally ends the battle phase, says no more of that, thank you. So yeah, definitely a nice little inclusion. I would mess about with these ratios. I'd probably take out Decisive Armor and Gongnir. Wow, once I play tested the deck and found out what else I could put in here, well, amongst the cards that I own anyway. Next up, I decided to go with 2 Shurit, mainly because we've got so much of the big guys. And if you didn't know, ladies and gents, the bigger Nekroz monsters, I think it's level 6 and higher, they all have a stipulation where they can't use their own level as the full ritual cost, so you need to use a combination of monsters basically. Shurit basically bypasses that because this can be used as the full tribute for any of your Nekroz monsters, providing you've got obviously the ritual spells to be able to summon them. So definitely a 2 you don't really want to see anymore. He can be searched quite easily. He's actually a warrior and he's lower than level 4, so obviously Rota can search him, but you can also search him with Brionac, so yeah. Next up, onto the Dogmatika portion, and we've obviously gone for our triple Ecclesia, MP21, a prismatic secret rare. These are going to be absolutely stonks when the Megatin waves start coming out basically, but we all know what Ecclesia does. We've also got, obviously we're running the Fleur de Lis, which is just super useful. It's a nice little negate, it's providing you've got a Dogmatika monster on field. We're also running a Maximus, which is kind of the MVP in this deck. So he basically can just cycle your extra deck, especially with Omega in there, which recycles cards in the graveyard as well as itself. You can have a bit of an infinite loop of popping cards and just gaining advantage off your Herald of Arclight. So definitely a useful card. It's probably one of the cards that you want to see going into like turn 2 or even potentially turn 1 basically. So yeah, a nice little card. It is a little bit of a hit and miss, especially with some of the meta matchups like Tri-Brigade. If you send in any of their graveyard or XYZ link monsters from their extra deck to the grave, they're going to plus off it. So that is something that you do need to bear in mind, but nonetheless, still a very, very strong card in this deck specifically anyway. And then we're running one White Knight of Dogmatika. This is basically like a bit of a Maximus, although what it allows you to do is look at your opponent's extra deck, see what they're playing, and you get to choose what card you send from the extra deck to the graveyard. And it happens when your opponent activates a card or an effect. So any card or effect which is monster, spell, or traps on either player's turn, which is super useful, and it actually happens before that resolves. So if they activate infinite impermanence, for example, you should really be able to like look at your opponent's extra deck, send it to the graveyard, and then the imperm would then obviously hit that card and negate the attack gain, because it gains attack equal to the monsters that are sent to the graveyard via its effect. So very, very useful piece of disruption there. Sending a Appaloosa above the goddess is a beautiful feeling, especially if they haven't gone into it. So one White Knight of Dogmatika. For the hand traps, I've just decided to go with Gamma, mainly because you proc this on your turn so easily. You do a load of searching in this deck, and at some point your opponent's going to want to hit you with either an Ash Blossom, a Ghost Spell, especially with Nadir Servant. It's just easy bait into a nice, easy, healthy Gamma. This is the only hand trap I'm running at the moment, and I would like to increase the hand trap size, mainly because it just offers yourself a little bit of protection, but that's something that I need to mess with in terms of basically the deck build. So we'll see about where else I can squeeze in hand traps, but I think Gamma's definitely a essential part of that, especially being able to go into Omega like efficiently. So yeah, it's a nice feeling. So Gamma package. Next, ladies and gents, onto the spells. We are running Dogmatic Calamity, Nekroz Cycle, Nekroz Mirror, and Nekroz of Kaleidoscope. Now I'm going to highlight these ones here, Kaleidoscope as well as Dogmatica Calamity. These allow you to send monsters from your extra deck to the graveyard to be able to ritual summon, which is a very powerful effect, and I'll show you a little combo towards the end of the video, which just utilizes Dogmatic Calamity, and see how much you can plus off this deck. So yeah, definitely nice bit of consistency. 5 ritual spells. You don't really need any more, to be honest, unless you plan on bricking. Next up, again for some consistency, we're running triple preparation of rites. Nothing more needs to be said about that, especially if you've activated a ritual spell already. Recovering one from grave and being able to use it again is a very, very nice feeling, as well as adding a ritual monster from your deck to your hand. Next up, this is the card which will just spark fears into your opponent's eyes, especially when they think you're playing Shadow Invoked Dogmatica. Nadir Servant. Managed to finally get my hands on a playset, so yeah, you already know what that does. And then finally, very, very simple, 1 Rota, 1 Reinforcements of the army. This looks for your Shurik, so very nice there. And then obviously Called by the Grave is just definitely needed, especially with hand traps being so prevalent at the moment. Forget Cross-Out Designator, people are still playing hand traps, so yeah. For the traps, I'm playing 1 Drytron Meteor Shower as well as Dogmatica Punishment. Punishment, we all know what does. Meteor Shower is a very interesting card. It is actually a counter trap that can negate special or normal summons, providing you control a ritual monster. So it is a little bit of a tech, but especially with this deck, you always end up with Unicorn on field anyway, and just negating a normal summon or a special summon, you can actually hold this, and it's a counter trap, so very, very hard to respond to basically. So yeah, nice little tech right there. And then obviously 1 Dogmatica Punishment just to pop cards. So onto the extra deck, ladies and gents, and I'm going to give you a bit of a preface here. The extra deck is not complete by any stretch of the imagination, but nevertheless, we are running 3 Herald of the Arclight. We all know what this does. Pluses for days, ladies and gents, pluses for days. I would not run any less of this, and you can actually recycle this with Cyframe Lord Omega, which is a nice feeling, being able to keep all your Nadir servants live for follow-up, so yeah. Next, we have 1 Cyframe Lord Omega, the previously aforementioned. He is very notorious in this deck. 1 Winged Pegasus at Agnista for a nice easy shuffle back, and 1 Cosmic Blazar Dragon, mainly because of the levels as well as the attack. Now, you can use this as a Dogmatica Punishment target. Also, it is a level 12, so if you did want to summon out multiple Nekroz monsters via Kaleidoscope, which allows you to do that, you can actually send this, as well as some of the other extra deck monsters that I'm about to showcase. So yeah, which is actually this thing that I pulled from Dual Overload. I pulled so many of these. Phantasm Emperor Trilogic, yeah, he's a level 10, so you can actually summon out your Unicorn as well as your Brainiac, I believe, which is a 6, using Kaleidoscope, because he can be the ritual cost for both of those monsters, which is very interesting. Outer Entity enters just for a nice easy pop, as well as being able to summon out your Nekroz of Unicorn. You can always shuffle one of them back with Omega if you still need one of them in your deck, as well as 2 Titanic Lad and a Nightmare Unicorn. Now, like I said, ladies and gents, extra deck's not complete. I will be definitely revisiting this deck once I've had a thought about what I want to include in the extra deck. But nevertheless, ladies and gents, let me just showcase really quickly what this deck can do in terms of plays. Okay, ladies and gents, so starting us off, we are easily and just going to start with one single Nadir servant. So you're going to activate your Nadir servant, and then you are going to send one of your Herald of the Arclight to grave to be able to add yourself a Dogmatika monster with less attack than a monster sent. So Herald of the Arclight has actually got 600 attack. So we're looking for our Dogmatika, White Knight of Dogmatika, which has 500 attack, which is incidentally a very nice feeling. So then on resolution, you're going to be able to resolve Herald of the Arclight to be able to add you a ritual spell or a ritual monster. And from that, we're going to add ourselves, if I can find it, we're looking for the Dogmatika ritual spell. Yeah, there it is, Dogmatika Calamity. So let's send Dear Servant to the Arclight. So from one card, ladies and gents, you've got a double search basically. So you've got your Dogmatika Calamity. Put that down there. Next, you're going to activate your Dogmatika Calamity, and you're going to send from your extra deck to the graveyard one Titanic Lad, the Ash Dragon, to be able to ritual summon your White Knight of Dogmatika. Now, Ash Dragon obviously is a level 8, ladies and gents, and you need to be able to send exactly the ritual requirements for your White Knight of Dogmatika, which is an 8 incidentally, which is very interesting. Now, anytime your opponent activates any card or effect, you can actually activate your White Knight and Dogmatika because it's met its condition, and you can send one card from your extra deck and one card from your opponent's extra deck to the graveyard by choice, and you get to choose, ladies and gents, which is super powerful. Now, obviously, we've sent Titanic Lad, so on end phase, we should be able to search ourselves. Oops, let's not mess that up. Search ourselves a Dogmatika Ecclesia. Ecclesia will then either, well, you can search it or you can special summon it. So if we special summon it, we can activate Ecclesia's effect to get to our hand. If I can find it, you can either go for your Maximus for a bit of a follow-up, because you should have something engraved, or you can go for your Fleur de Lis for your negate, ladies and gents, and the option is entirely up to you. Potentially I would go for the Fleur de Lis, but like I said, ladies and gents, your option is up to you. Now, this is not keeping in mind all the other monsters that you potentially could have in your hand. You could even end up on a Reed Bear or even a Unicorn on field as well, ladies and gents, playing around Nib, as well as having either a negate or a follow-up in Maximus or a negate in Fleur de Lis. So very, very powerful board, ladies and gents, very, very powerful board. There's a few things that this deck can do, and it does hate on the extra deck, but like I said, it needs a little bit of refining, which is what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, basically, with regards to play testing and just optimizing the deck. But anyway, ladies and gents, we find ourselves at the end of another video. If you think there was any cards or ideas that I should be included in this deck, definitely get at me in that comment section below. And as always, if you did enjoy this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff, and I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.